Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here with Everything MSP. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. We know attackers aren't just going after servers and endpoints anymore. Identity is the new battleground. Whether it be 365 compromises or diverted payments, the stakes are higher than ever. That's why I'm extremely excited to have today's session with Bill Stevens from Huntress. Bill is going to walk us through how attackers get in, how they monetize access, and most importantly, what MSPs can do to stop them. At Everything MSP, our focus is always education first, with real takeaways you can use with your clients. By the end of today's session, you'll have both a clearer picture of today's identity based threats and practical strategies to stay ahead. With that being said, let's dive in and welcome Bill. And there we have Bill. How you doing today, Bill?
All good here. Thanks, Dan.
Awesome to have you here, and looking forward to today's session. You ready to get rolling?
Yeah, let's go.
Awesome.
Some of my background, I'm a Penn State University alum. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today, and my background's kind of in IT, cybersecurity, and customer success. So, been doing a lot with all three of those domains for the past 18 years, working with MSPs in various capacities. I've worked at several different MSP-focused companies in the channel. Again, in those different roles between the IT space, the cybersecurity space, and then focused on customer success as well. So, today at Huntress, as a technical account manager, I kind of use all three of those skill sets to help our partners make sure they're successful with a Huntress platform. And overall, just make sure we're elevating them as MSPs, right? We want them to be successful as an MSP. We want them to be successful with their cybersecurity practice. And so that's part of the role of the technical account manager here is really ensuring their success.
Awesome. So I want to jump in, and jump right into our first area of topic and talking about some identity security threats. And so let's go ahead and jump over to that. And I'm going to let you start things off with us today, Bill.
Yeah, thanks. And so, before I jump into any of the missteps on ITDR that I want to talk about, I want to set the stage talking about the cybercrime industry, right? And
Yeah.
the cybercrime industry, it's truly a growth industry, right? It's a business at this point. We're no longer talking about like the Hollywood depiction of these kids in the hoodies in the basement that are hacking into something, right? We're talking about like a business model. I mean, they have help desks set up so that when they ransomware you contact their help desk, and their help desk is there to help you get back up and running right after they've installed ransomware. So like it's kind of crazy to think about, but like this is a business model, and the hackers are out there buying tools, buying credentials on the dark web to get in and ultimately make money, right? They're in it to make money. That's their ultimate goal. Um, just to share some of the stats that we have, there's 21,000 incidents a year, and that averages out to be at 85 incidents a day in the US. The cyber losses are only increasing, right? From these attacks, 16.6 billion was reported in 2024. That's up from 12.5 billion in 2023. So these numbers are huge, right? $16 billion, and it's only going up, right? It's only an increasing number. Um, One of the ones that I really want to focus on today is business email compromise. So this type of
Yep.
attack, it's identity focused, and the average business email compromise in 2023 was $137,000. And
Mm.
that's like an actual number here, right? Like
Yeah.
this could be devastating to a small or medium business, right? To an MSP client, like this could be a devastating amount of money to lose. And again, to the hackers, right? They're just raking in this money on these business email compromise attacks.
Yeah, and what's amazing too is that the focus is so much on different type of incidents and different type of threats, and there's this mindset that email is pretty much benign. There's really not a lot of threat there, but that is just so far from the truth, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the email, the identity is a target, and with with the AI at their fingertips now, with the technology that's available, these cyber attacks, unfortunately, are just going to become more difficult to defend against. So it's really important that we're looking at all fronts, right? We're not just looking at the endpoint. We're not just looking at the network. We're considering the identity, because that truly is a completely different front that the attackers are targeting right now.
Yeah. And I think this topic couldn't be more relevant because, those identity compromises are showing up in, almost every type of incident that we hear from MSPs these days.
Yeah, yeah. Um, And so, I think that kind of leads me right into my first topic, right? And the first misstep that you can make is not being focused on the identity. I think there's, unfortunately too many out there that think, I have my EDR, I have my SOC monitoring it, we're good, right? I think that's a misstep, right? Not focusing on the identity, not having a solution for ITDR is probably one of the most common missteps that we see. Um, when we think about the identity and what's being attacked there, it's really the new attack perimeter. If you think about the old school network perimeter of a firewall, that's different in this cloud first world. We have remote workforces, we have hybrid work models. If you're not defending the identity attack surface, you're going to face a ton of risks with account takeover, business email compromise, and threat actors can even pivot from that then into the network, and that's when they're going to detonate their ransomware.
Any thoughts why this is an area that might be overlooked these days? Is there, any relevance to, just not, taking it serious enough?
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I mean, I think sometimes it's the thought that these solutions maybe are secure by default, which is probably is not the right thought to have. But
Yeah.
someone getting moving from, let's say, an on-premise Exchange server to Microsoft 365, they're like, well, it's in the cloud, right? Surely Microsoft has
Right.
secured it and it's protected, right? I, I mean, Microsoft's infrastructure is likely secure, but that's not going to stop someone from taking over one of your client's identities and misusing their email for an attack.
Similar, I think too, is because it is in the cloud, you think, okay, this is a hosted solution that, I don't need any kind of backup of my data, because it's protected, there's redundancy, but, you still do that because that there isn't any perfect solution and you want to have that layered approach.
Yeah, exactly. I think another big one is the alert fatigue, right? I mean, that's one of the points I have on here. Like,
Yeah.
there's already a lot of alert fatigue in security, right? On the endpoint side alone, there's a lot of noise that gets generated, and so, I think sometimes it could be daunting to someone to think like, I have to add another solution that's going to create even more noise for me.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that, I think that could be a reason that, and then they think, well, maybe the identity isn't important, right? I don't need that noise on the identity side.
Yeah. And to, that alert fatigue, a lot of times, if it's not being managed right or you're not using the proper tools or not, leveraging a partner that is able to filter through that, it does become overwhelming. And then, you might be looking at a lot of noise that you're clearing out. And you think, oh, is it really worth it? We're not really finding that many things, but that it might be just that next alert that comes up that is the pivotal one that could have a major implication on that environment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I one stat I like to share here is that 67% of the high and critical incident reports that our SOC sent here at Huntress in 2024 were identity related, right? And so that's 2/3 of the critical incidents that we're sending out are on the identity side versus the endpoint side. And like a lot of the other numbers that I've shared today, like that's only increased in 2025. So far this year, I think we're close to 81% of our critical alerts have been on the identity side versus the endpoint side.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I mean, the identity is just getting targeted at such an increased rate versus the endpoint. Make no mistake here, hackers aren't giving up on the endpoint, but the identity is it's such an easy target for them, given some of the lack of protection that's out there, that that's their target right now.
Gotcha. Very good.
So let's take a look at what happens in an unprotected Microsoft 365 environment, right? I'd like to walk through this attack chain. So in case anyone isn't familiar with how these attacks go down, threat actor always starts out with a phishing campaign, right? They start out with their phishing campaign, send out their emails, trying to get someone to click on something. Typically, they're going to target the admins because they want to get someone to click their link and they want to capture those admin credentials. Somewhere, one admin's going to click it, right? Some admin's going to click this email. They're going to reset their password, put in their password, reset it. They're going to give the attacker their current valid password, right? So now the attacker has a valid admin password. They're going to log in from some obfuscated location, typically something like a shady VPN or a Tor browser. In this case, we're saying they're using a Tor browser to hide their identity. They're going to log in to create some persistence. They're going to create their own admin account, right? So now they're kind of bypassing any other controls you have set up. They're already in the network as an admin. So to establish persistence, they're going to set up their own admin account in the network. They don't even need the stolen credentials. So that admin, when they figure out something's wrong, they can reset their password. Doesn't matter. They have a new account created in here. And with that, they start up setting up the next part of their attack there. And ultimately what that's going to lead to is some type of financial loss, right? They're typically going to move into some type of moving payment information around, trying to route invoice emails to their external account. At the end of the day here, if the attack is successful, they're getting payments diverted to their bank account. They're stealing the money from your end client.
Yeah, and when we take a look at that payment diversion, this is the kind of scenario where MSPs really take the heat. Even though it's an attacker that exploited the identity, it's not necessarily infrastructure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not the traditional infrastructure, which is why it's so important to focus on the identity, because all of this that you see here, this entire attack chain is kind of happening on the identity side, right? Your EDR is not going to see this. And your EDR may see an account creation, but again, what's an account creation? I mean, people create accounts all the time. And so, having something that's focused on the identity and kind of stopping up that up front is super important. And this is kind of how we do it at Huntress, right? We have different parts of our product that target the different tradecraft that hackers are using, right? Hackers are using the credential theft, they're installing the malicious OAuth apps, they're staging for the business email compromises. What we're doing is we're looking for that unwanted access. We're looking for the suspicious logins, the suspicious VPN tunneling, the credential and token theft. We're looking for the shadow workflows that they set up, right? Those suspicious inbox rules that say, move all those emails that say ACH finance or invoice, move those off to a location no one's going to see them. We're looking for things like that with our shadow workflows capability. And then, of course, the rogue apps, like I said, those OAuth applications that get installed, it's another way that they maintain persistence. And that's something else that we're looking for with the Huntress managed ITDR.
And, in this particular area, I think, I'd like to frame this more as, an EDR of identities. Does that analogy fit?
It sure does. Yeah. I mean, that's actually going to lead right into my next point here and my next misstep that I want to mention, which is protection solutions, right?
Okay.
So nobody's perfect, right? No solution is perfect out there. And if you're relying solely on protection solutions for your email and for your identity, that's like relying on AV alone for your desktops, right? I think at this point, everyone knows that EDR is table stakes. You need to have EDR because, unfortunately, while the known bad is caught by AV, the unknown, the suspicious activity, that's not caught by AV. And so you need an EDR. The exact same analogy holds true for the identity side. Your protection solutions are great. You should have protection solutions. No one's going to tell you to go without AV for your endpoints. So I'm not telling you to go without protection solutions, but you do need to have an ITDR solution looking for that suspicious activity that's not going to be caught by some of the traditional protection solutions.
Right.
And I mean, I can talk through some of these, right? Like multi-factor authentication. For years, we've said like everyone needs MFA. That's absolutely true. I wouldn't say don't use MFA, but MFA is limited in scope, right? It's securing the login process. It's not monitoring what happens after a user is authenticated. And if MFA is either bypassed with a session hijacking attack, or if they've bypassed the need with some exploit altogether, MFA is not securing against that. It's not securing against credential theft. If their credentials have been stolen, if they're in a network already and they've created another user, MFA is not going to help with that. So while MFA is an important protection aspect, it's not enough to secure your identities alone.
And it's amazing. A few weeks ago, one of our MSP discussion group calls, we had an MSP who demonstrated he went through on a video. He demonstrated in probably less than 7 minutes how a session hijacking can take place, and it's just mind blowing because
Yeah.
we think that MFA is that silver bullet, but we all know there is no silver bullet. There is no magic wand when it comes to cybersecurity.
That's exactly it, right? And you'd be surprised how easy it is, like you said, to bypass those MFA controls. And so, yes, it's important, but it can't be the only control you have. It can't be the silver bullet, because it's truly not. And the same goes for like conditional access, right? Again, it's a great thing to have, but they're static rules, and they're really kind of reactive to the login happening. They're not going to stop session hijacking. So if there's already a session that's been established, conditional access policy isn't going to stop that. It also doesn't have any threat detection built in, right? Conditional access policies they're just rules. They're not
Yeah.
looking for suspicious behavior. They're not designed to detect ongoing threats. They're designed to be something that prevents that initial access from happening, but it's leaving an organization vulnerable to threats that occur after the access is granted.
Right. Yeah, and in some of these areas too, I know, we've spoken about this in the past with Huntress. Just some of the things that can be done from a monitoring perspective. Identifying that there's a new login from a location that's never been logged in before, and there is no historical data on them being in another country, or the fact that they may have just logged in, let's say, Dallas, but then they're logging in, hours later in a foreign country. There's a lot of things that can be identified and, help to mitigate those type of situations, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the unwanted access capability that we have, we're not only just looking at locations, right? We're matching up several different pieces of data with that. So we're looking at, what browser are they using? What browser have they historically used? Same with
Yeah.
operating system. Same with location, right? And so the ways that we can detect things like token theft and credential theft from happening is that, if we see someone logging in from Dallas, like you said, from a Windows laptop using Edge, and then all of a sudden we see that same session token in use from someone coming in from, let's say, Virginia, but they're using Linux and they're using Chrome.
Right.
Well, that doesn't add up, right? And so now we know right away, even though that's not a foreign country, like something bad is going on here,
Yeah.
because someone's same session, they're not going to move across operating systems and browsers.
Right. Yeah, and those just key signs that are so critical. One of the things that we talk a lot about is, if this all seems like an amazing amount of work and hard work, it's because it is, and it's all what we are here for and what we're doing to help protect our clients.
Yeah. Well, the bad guys aren't going to slow down, right? They're going to try to find different ways to exploit and different ways to make their money by running the scams that they run. So we need to continue to build defenses and make sure that we're ready to detect that.
Absolutely.
And so the last one I want to mention here is spam filters, right? Because I do hear this sometimes from some MSPs that, I'm going to have this great spam filter up front. I'm going to protect the inbox up front. And the flaw with that is that, again, like multi-factor authentication, like conditional access, a spam filter is a great thing to have, but it's not the be all end all, right? This is not the silver bullet either, because they're designed to block the spam, they're designed to block the phishing attempts, but there's going to be something that gets through. Again, hackers are always looking for new ways. Nothing is 100%. And so if we think that the spam filter is 100%, that's a flawed logic there. Something's going to get through. Someone's going to click something at some point, and Once that's done, if there's no monitoring in place, if there's no one looking at the activity, then that's when these threat actors can just operate, completely undetected, because no one's watching for that activity after the spam filter. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, spam filter important to have up front, but it's not going to be the silver bullet either.
And, I think you said it best up front when you said, you wouldn't run without AV, but nobody thinks AV is going to be enough alone. And the same thing with this identity protection. We got to do more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You got to have your protection solutions, you got to have your MFA, your conditional access, your spam filters, but you have to have some type of ITDR looking at the activity that's happening across the account, across the logins, and what could be suspicious, because again, that's going to be where they target. One example that I like to share is, an oil and gas research network that actually avoided an account compromise due to Huntress ITDR. And so the way this attack works is, this is an adversary in the middle attack. And, Dan, this might be actually what this type of attack might be what was demoed that you explained to me, that
Yeah.
someone sets up basically a transparent proxy to capture the credentials of someone logging into it. And so typically it includes a spoofed Microsoft login page. Someone logs in, provides their credentials, provides the MFA, and all of that is given a session token. The session token is captured by the threat actor that's sitting in the middle. They use that session token to then kind of replay the session on their end and get into the account. So they effectively bypass MFA in this point. And this is something that we're looking for. Our attacker in the middle detection mechanisms, we've actually detected hundreds of these confirmed adversary in the middle attacks with our ITDR product. And again, just super important. Why you need an ITDR solution is to look for things like this, because your conditional access isn't going to stop this. There's no foreign country involved. There's the spam filter may not stop the link. And again, MFA just bypassed here.
So let's talk about it from this perspective, as far as, these type of attacks. How often are you seeing these happen?
Uh, Hourly.
Yeah.
I mean daily, hourly to daily for sure. Because again, their MFA is pretty well known at this point. And so
Right.
attackers need to find a way to get past that MFA. And this is an effective way to get past it, right? Using this type of attack. So a lot of the attacks that we see now do involve some type of adversary in the middle, trying to capture that token, trying to hijack the session and then take it over. So even with MFA, they're able to get past it. So yeah, we see this unfortunately a lot more than I'd like.
Well, the other thing that keeps coming to mind for me is, it's one thing when we know what their line of business software is. So we know that, they're using XYZ, ABC, and, we know that everything, all MFA is in place. So, there at least is that level in place. There's that first safeguard. But we all know that with shadow IT, there's end users that, they're not trying to cause problems, but they're trying to do their job better. They're looking for different solutions, and they may not be enabling MFA and for a particular product. And so, if we don't know about it, that it's first off, if we know about it, we want to make sure MFA is in place, and we also need to make sure that we have mechanisms in place to be able to better secure it in case of these type of these threats. But if we don't know that they're using a tool and they don't have MFA in place, then it's even more disastrous.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the identity is linked to so much, right? Think about what applications your M365 is tied to for SSO, right? Think of all the different applications users are accessing through that. And so, someone who compromises an account that gets access to that, it really opens the door to them to other applications and other ways that they can cause damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another example, just to share here, of one of the things we do with ITDRs, we're looking for these rogue applications, and we kind of split these up into two different categories, right? We call it traderware and stealthware. Traderware being something that is a legitimate application that's it's used illegitimately. So think of something like an EM client or perfect data software. They're not always indicative of evil activity, but statistically speaking, we see them frequently enough and with high enough true positive rates that we alert on these when we see them. Uh, the other part is stealthware, which is shown in this example here. It's an unknown application, right? This application was literally named XXX, and it was installed in a high school organization M365 environment. Um, Typically, these just have like way overarching permissions, right? Like they can access all mailboxes, they can bypass security controls. Like it's persistence for a threat actor in an M365 environment if they can get one of these rogue OAuth apps installed. And so it's something that we're looking for, and we see these installed pretty often as well, whether it's that like that traderware that I mentioned or the stealthware here. But when we see something like this, we know that something bad is happening, right? There's no one that legitimately has installed this, XXX application with all
Yeah.
these permissions into their M365 environment.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example where the ITDR becomes critical, and and I think for MSPs, it's not always something that they're watching out for. And so why is it? And can you explain a little bit how these rogue apps are sneaking past traditional defenses?
Yeah, well, for one, Microsoft kind of allows anyone to just install these OAuth applications, and so you don't even have to be an admin in some cases to install them. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. The other is there's just there's not a lot of tools that look for these rogue OAuth applications. They often just go undetected in an M365 environment. Again, if you're focused on the protection aspect of things with your MFA and your conditional access, that's not looking for something like this that's lurking in a Microsoft 365 environment. The protection aspects are doing just that. They're protecting someone up front. But if one of these gets installed, it's in there in the environment at that point.
Absolutely. I want to talk about a pretty important thing in all of our businesses, humans. the,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
human factor, right?
the
I mean,
human factor.
yeah, I mean,
um,
it's wild.
it really is. The human factor is going to be the third misstep that I talk about here, right? Like the humans are the largest attack surface of any organization,
Hmm.
and it's kind of crazy to think about that. The Verizon data breach investigations report, which we were actually a contributor to at Huntress, highlighted that 60% of data breaches are linked to a human element.
That's
And
huge.
so it's a huge, right? It's over half of these breaches. And it's the same as the previous year. So I guess it's one thing that's not going up, but it's still way too high, right? 60% being linked to the human factor is just such a huge number.
And why, what has changed? Why are people continuing to fall for these?
So I'll share a couple examples next here, but
Okay.
I think it's that people unfortunately are everyone's busy, right? Everyone has like everyone you talk to, they have busy work schedule, busy life, and so hackers are preying on that, right? They're preying on you being busy. They're also targeting you not wanting to get in trouble, right? And so things are often sent with like a false sense of urgency because something's going to happen if you don't do this, right? Like if you don't click this, your account's going to be deleted, or if you don't do this, like um, I don't know, whatever the case is, like someone will be notified. Like it's preying on this false sense of urgency that you need to do this or else. And unfortunately, pair that with people being busy, people wanting to get their actual job done. They click, they shouldn't
Yep.
click, and they click. Um, and yeah, I mean, so to share some of the examples that we see, right? Here's some of the things that we see, and I think this might answer your question a little bit of like why do people keep doing it as well?
Yeah.
Um, Malicious QR codes. Like QR
Yeah.
codes are everywhere now, right? You
Right.
go to like a sporting event, you go anywhere, and like there's a QR code. You go to a restaurant, there's like a QR code for a menu. Like everywhere you go, there's QR codes. And so, the adversaries use that to their advantage. They say, well, we'll throw a QR code in the email. Everyone knows to scan those now. Everyone knows, those are prevalent. So let's just include the QR code, have them scan it from their phone and log in from there. And so maybe even if you're watching the endpoint, even if you're doing something on the endpoint side, like they're going to scan this QR code with their phone, they're going to log in from their phone. It doesn't matter where they log in from to the hacker, they're capturing the credentials that way. So yeah, the QR codes, I think, you don't have to click, right? You just scan it, you log in, they got your credentials.
I got to say, I was driving down the road the other day, and someone, it's just a random car, it wasn't a business vehicle. Someone had a big QR code on the back of their back window, and I just thought, I just, why? I mean, there was no other information. It was just a QR code.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, these QR codes are everywhere, and unfortunately, it's kind of had the opposite effect of training people that like, oh, these are okay to scan, right? If you see a QR code, go ahead and scan it because they're everywhere. And so, yeah, it's something that we got to be careful with. When we're getting an email with a QR code, you got to look for the traditional signs, right? Who did it come from? What is it asking for? Look for the grammar mistakes, right? Look for those key indicators in that email, because the QR code is not always going to be safe to scan.
Yeah.
And then PDF attachments. And so this one's interesting because what they'll do is they'll send an email from like a legitimate Dropbox or something, and it'll link to a PDF. And so someone gets this email and they see it and they're like, oh, okay, this came from Dropbox. That must be safe. They go to the file, they get the PDF, and the malicious link is actually in the PDF. And so from there, if they click on it, right, that's going to take them to whatever, malicious download or page to capture their credentials. But because that link is like buried in a PDF that's linked out from a Dropbox, they get past spam filters, right? The spam filter isn't seeing this because it's not looking at that malicious link. It's not even looking at the PDF in some cases, because they're being sent to download a PDF that has the link embedded in it. And so it's just another way these hackers get creative to bypass the security controls, right? They know spam filters are out there. They're trying to find ways around them. And this is an interesting way that they found to get around them, is by sending that malicious link embedded in a PDF that's linked out from the email.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we talked a little bit about this before, about being too quick to click. And, and unfortunately, there is no technology that can fix that fast clicking. And, and people are always going to be part of the equation.
Yeah. They are. And so again, that's why the training is so important, right? That you have to train them on the things to look out for. And like even these 3 common scenarios here are great things to train people on, right? Like QR codes. Be careful. Like don't just scan any QR code you see. Like look at who it's from. Same thing with any type of email you get. Before you click, slow down and look for the signs, right? Look for who it's from. Look for the grammar mistakes. Look for the false sense of urgency, or the false consequences that they're stating are going to happen, right? All of these are signs of a phishing attack, and just slowing down before you click anything is going to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll share another example here of something that we see coming across email, right? And so this is a kind of another category we see. This is the click fix attack phishing. So really what this does is someone sent a DocuSign email or some email that they're going to click their link. Once they click that link, a CAPTCHA pops up asking them to verify they're human. And so again, this is like the QR codes. Everyone's been trained that like CAPTCHAs are everywhere. And so, yep, I have to verify I'm not a robot. And like, this is something that people just do it without thinking. But this CAPTCHA works a little bit differently. It's kind of small on the screen, but what it does is it says, hey, to verify you're not a robot, you need to hit Windows key R and then hit Control V and then hit enter. And so if you're familiar with keyboard shortcuts, what it's actually asking you to do is open up a Windows run prompt, paste something into there, it's going to be a malicious command, and execute it. And so, these hackers don't even need to like get into a network or get to an endpoint anymore. Like, forget about it, any firewalls you have in place or any type of filtering or anything you have in place, right? I mean, they're just going to trick the end user into running a malicious command directly on their endpoint through an email like this. And so, again, this is something that our threat research team has really seen ramp up, are these fake CAPTCHA attacks, and it's something we're detecting on now with our ITDR. So, and even more of a reason to have that layered defense of your EDR plus ITDR.
Absolutely. And just going back to the whole training thing, we can never, just like anything, I mean, training isn't a one-time thing, it's a continuous thing. And we need to be involved. I mean, let's face it, the laptop, the desktop that we're putting end users in front of is a huge vehicle, a potential weapon that we need to protect. We need to educate them on a continuous basis because, like you said earlier in the game, bad actors are continuing to up their game, and we need to be faster and continue to up our game in that protection side.
Yeah, the training is just, I think it's a crucial part of it because, again, people are going to click in the absence of not knowing any better, right? Some of these things look very convincing, right? Like these QR codes, these links, the permissions that are asked for, like they all look very convincing. The
Yeah,
CAPTCHA, right? Like people are going to do these things because they think, well, I do this all the time, right? Like I did 3 CAPTCHAs this morning. Like why is this one bad, right? They're not
right.
gonna The typical end user is not gonna know that, Windows key and a paste command are actually, how impactful that is. And so, yeah, it's the training that'll make the difference, right? The training will make the difference here because they'll remember, oh, I saw something in a video about, these fake CAPTCHAs. I saw something in a video about a malicious QR code. The training is important. Having memorable training is important. And again, just being able to explain to your client that, like, this isn't, we're not doing this to make your life more difficult. We're doing this because the costs associated with the downtime, the losses that you could face if someone does one of these, right? It only takes, one person to click on something, one person to get compromised, and that could be significant loss for someone.
And if we don't train them, who will?
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. All right. Well, let's go to my last misstep. The fourth misstep I want to talk about here is um, maybe just thinking that, like, that you're done, right? Thinking that your security is enough, thinking that, like, okay, I got my protection solutions in place. I got my ITDR in place. I have my EDR in place. Like, I'm good, right? I think that is a misstep in its of self, like thinking that you're done once you've implemented all of your detection and response solutions, your protection solutions. I think the next part of this is being prepared, right? You need to be prepared for when something happens. Unfortunately, these hackers are always finding new ways to trick people. They're always looking for ways to bypass your controls, to bypass the detection and response. And so I think, it's really important to be prepared for when something does happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, you're saying that it's when we can for an MSP. Sorry, I got a little off track there, but ITDR protections training. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we still need more, and there's more of that layered approach in adding
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, we've talked about the identity attacks growing, right? We've seen, like, huge increase in those. 2/3 of our critical alerts at Huntress were identity related in the past year. Like, yes, we definitely know they're growing, but endpoint and identity are interconnected, right? The attackers, they don't see them as silos. They don't see them as like, well, let me try to attack the identity, and if that doesn't work, I'll attack the endpoint, right? They see these as connected, and yeah, endpoints can lead to identity compromise through things like credential dumping, right? If someone gets into an endpoint, they can do credential dumping. They can get their credentials needed to then compromise identities. On the flip side of that, compromised identities can then lead to endpoint control, right? If you have a compromised identity, they may use those credentials to do something like an RDP attack or OAuth abuse, script execution, right? Like these things are connected. And so, the traditional security approach of having endpoint security alone, it's really not enough, but it's also not enough to have just identity security. And having the same team monitor both is going to give you the best visibility. So if, again, if you just have your endpoint security, you're going to detect your malware and exploits, but you're going to miss the identity abuse, the stolen credentials, the privilege escalation. With identity security, if you have one team looking at that, they're going to see the login anomalies, but they're going to be blind to any endpoint level attacks like the credential dumping, session hijacking, malware execution. So, a unified approach, taking one approach and really setting a standard that, again, just like EDR is table stakes now, ITDR should be as well. And my recommendation would be to have that in any standard offering, is like you get EDR and ITDR both, because they're both so interconnected and attackers can pivot between the two. Like, you need to have both protected.
And I liken it to, I wear glasses. For those that do wear glasses, my prescription might be a couple years old, right? We should be updating that annually, getting our eyes checked because our vision changes. And it is amazing where, you might fall back and, you might wait a couple, 3 years, and then you get new prescriptions, new lenses, and you can see so much clearer. And just there's my little analogy on, it's the same thing here. If we don't add these additional layers of protection in, and we wait too long to do that, we're not going to have that necessary visibility. But when we do put it in place, it's just this aha moment, this clearer vision into what we're doing to help protect the clients. And it is our responsibility to ensure that we have the clearest vision possible at all times.
Yeah, I like the analogy. It's a good one, right? It's like you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, or you don't know what's happening in your M365 environment until you have a solution like this. So yeah, I think having your EDR plus ITDR, yeah, it's definitely a critical step to take at this point. Um, I'd also say, make sure you're leveraging your resources, right? Make sure you're leveraging the same things that the attackers are leveraging out there. And so there's things like the FBI's IC3 website. There's the ic3.gov/CSA. That's their cybersecurity advisories about best practices and threats. The bad guys are looking at this to know what we're looking at, right? They're looking at this to say, like, okay, here's what people know we're doing, so we need to take a different tactic. So, like, the bad guys are looking at this. You should be looking at this because this is going to tell you what the emerging threats are. The FBI also has their ic3.gov/PSA. That is their public service announcement website, and that's actually where this screenshot is taken from. Last December, they posted this advisory on criminals using generative AI to facilitate financial fraud. And so, just staying on top of things, like you were saying, Dan, about about kind of keeping up to date on the eyeglasses prescriptions, right? It's similar to that, right? Like, you got to keep up with these things because cybersecurity moves so fast, and it's such a cat and mouse game of we build one detection, we build one thing, the hackers find a new way around it. And so leveraging the resources that are out there, staying on top of the information is really important, because you let a few months to a year pass by and it's going to be a totally different ballgame.
Absolutely. So as we begin to wrap things up, let's talk about being prepared. What are some of the things that we can do and should be looking for?
Yeah. So there's a few things I would say, right? One, cyber insurance. Your clients should all have cyber insurance. You don't have to be a cyber insurance expert, but talk to your clients about cyber insurance. Talk to them about why they need it, and make sure they know, if they do have cyber insurance, make sure they know the limits and know what's covered. The worst thing you want to happen is that there's an incident, they think their cyber insurance is going to cover everything, and maybe they don't have the right coverage. Maybe they don't have the right plan. Again, you don't have to be the expert, but get them connected to the expert, to a cyber insurance broker, right? Because they may not know, right? They just may not be aware of certain limits or certain coverages they need. But the cyber insurance thing, again, it's something like, I would consider it, a necessity for any client at this point.
What's the next step in being prepared?
Next step would be an incident response plan. And so something's going to happen, right? Whether you like this or not, it's like something's
Right.
going to happen,
Yeah.
and you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan that you've reviewed with your clients. Again, bad scenario is going to be if an incident happens and your client's coming to you saying, "Well, I thought that's what I had you for, right? I thought you were protecting me against these things." You need to, explain to your customers that nothing is 100%. The defenses that we put in place are just that, they're defenses, but nothing is guaranteed. And so if something happens, what's the plan, right? Ideally you'd walk through like a tabletop exercise with them
Yeah.
to make sure they understand like how things actually go down during an incident. But have a copy of that incident response plan as well. I've talked to some MSPs that say, sure, my client has an incident response plan, they have it on their network. Well, what happens if that network gets ransomware, right? Like,
Yeah.
where's the incident response plan? So have a copy of that incident response plan. You should have a copy of incident response plan for each client. Make sure you've gone over it with them, make sure they understand it, so that in the event of an incident, right, you're following that plan and no one's panicking.
And that tabletop exercise is gold. I mean, I think it is overlooked, I think, a little too much, in my opinion, but I think it is truly gold because it shows that client what steps are going to be involved. They know what to expect, they know what could go wrong. And at the end of the day, they are part of it then versus it just being something in writing that you say, okay, here's the plan, go ahead and file this. They know
Yeah.
what's involved, and so there shouldn't be any surprises in the event when the event occurs.
Well, I like what you just said, right? It helps them know, if something goes wrong, right? Sometimes those tabletop exercises can actually uncover gaps that you may have in an incident response plan, right?
Yeah,
Maybe you and your client have written up something and you think it's good, but then when you actually run through it, you find like, oh, what happens in this scenario, right? What happens if this person is on vacation? Like, what do we do next? And so,
yeah,
a tabletop exercise is a much better place to discover those gaps versus an actual incident.
yeah. What's next on the prepared list?
uh, Business continuity plan. And so, there's going to be downtime. Unfortunately, if there's an incident, there's going to be downtime. No clients like downtime, especially clients that work off like billable hours, right? Downtime is not something they're going to enjoy. So having a business continuity plan will help you ensure that their business can continue to run. Can you leverage the cloud for resilience? What are you doing for natural disasters, right? Like, cyber incidents aside, like, what if there's a natural disaster? Every client should have a business continuity plan so that in the event of downtime, they know how they can continue to operate and continue to run their business.
How about SIM?
Yeah, SIM. So SIM, sometimes we think of it as like compliance, right? Like we need all our logs, for compliance purposes. What I'll say with SIM and how it ties to being prepared is that it keeps all your logs in one place. And so the first thing any incident response firm is going to ask for is going to be logs. If you have a major incident, you engage an incident response firm, they're going to say, okay, give us all your logs. If you have to go to each of your firewalls, all of your endpoints, all of your servers, collect all those logs, collect them somewhere, and then get them to that IR firm, like, that's all that time is more time that your client is down. If you have all those logs already collected in a SIM, if they're already in one place, you can export those, give them right to the IR firm, right? That cuts out all that time. Not to mention, if a threat actor has cleared logs, right, then they're going to be in your SIM because they can clear all the local logs they want. They're retained in SIM. So yeah, I mean, having a SIM, there's many benefits to having a SIM, but I think, just in the spirit of being prepared, having a SIM is going to cut down on the downtime that your client would experience.
Absolutely. And, Bill, we have covered a lot today. We talked about why ITDR is critical, why protection alone isn't enough, where humans play that role, which is such a critical aspect, and where preparation is a non negotiable. For MSPs, this is about being realistic. We know that there isn't any single solution that's going to be perfect. We got to have that layered approach, that layered defense, and that preparedness to give your clients the best chance to succeed. But before we wrap up, can you share where Huntress fits in and how our audience can learn more about you guys?
Yeah, for sure. And so, I know I spent a whole lot of time talking about malicious QR codes. I promise you, this one is not malicious.
Yeah,
But if you're cautious of it, you could always go to huntress.com/start-trial, and you can start your trial there rather than scanning the code. But yeah, I mean, we help with a lot of the parts of what we talked today about, right? We have a managed EDR, we have managed ITDR, we have a managed SIM, and we have managed security awareness training. So, all of the things that we talked about, protecting your endpoints, protecting your identities, retaining your logs with the SIM, and that training, security awareness training, we help with all four of those. And all four are managed, right? And so we talked earlier about alert fatigue and how noisy some of these tools are. Everything from Huntress is managed by our SOC. It's all one SOC. And they really do synergize between the products. For example, in our security awareness training, our threat research team that sits within our SOC, they're the ones that are curating episodes and curating content for that security awareness training. So we're staying on top of the emerging threats, and that's the type of content that we're building for our security awareness training. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a solution in any of these places, I'd say either scan that or go to that URL to get started with a trial. And the nice thing about Huntress Trial is that you get full access to our SOC. So it's not watered down or limited in any way. I know with some products, like you're limited to a certain feature set. With a Huntress trial, you get full access to everything. And that includes 24/7 SOC coverage. And I just, again, I encourage everyone to go out there, deploy widely during a trial, because you never know what might be lurking in an environment.
that's awesome. It's a great way to test it out. And I know you're going to like this comment from Dieter listening in from LinkedIn. He said, "I'm glad to see that I'm following the best practices in addition to having Huntress ITDR." So I'm sure you'd love to hear you
Yeah,
love to hear that one. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you, Dieter. Thanks for being a great Huntress partner.
and Bill, I want to thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting with you. We learned a lot today, and I greatly appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Anytime. Nice talking
Uh,
with you too.
all right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Take care.